Welcome to this edition of the Beef Roundtable. Many of our producers across the country have harvested low-quality hay at one time or another, and this year was no exception. This edition of the Beef Roundtable will be discussing how to evaluate low-quality hay and how to develop a practical supplementation strategy that will meet beef cattle requirements. I'm Dr. Ron Luminager, Beef Extension Specialist at Purdue University, West Lafayette, Indiana. The Beef Roundtable is recorded live and edited to fit the time constraints of the program. The program is available at Beef Magazine website, youtube.com, as well as www.beefroundtable.com.
And I'm Bert Rutherford, Senior Editor at Beef Magazine, based in Amarillo, Texas. I'm coming to you today from the American Quarter Horse Association. Each month on the Beef Roundtable, we discuss timely topics that impact the beef industry. Our topic today has both an agronomy and a nutrition component, and our first guest is Dr. Keith Johnson, Forage Extension Specialist at Purdue University. Dr. Johnson has focused his career on the enhancement of ruminant livestock production through evaluation of forages. Among his laurels, Dr. Johnson has earned the Visionary Leadership Award and the Distinguished Service Award from Epsilon Sigma Phi.
Our second guest is Dr. John Paterson, who's most recently retired as the Executive Director for Producer Education with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Prior to joining NCBA, John was a beef cattle nutritionist in the Department of Animal and Range Science at Montana State University and also at the University of Missouri. He's been recognized by his peers and has received the National Extension Award from the American Society of Animal Science and a Distinguished Service Award from the Western Section of the American Society of Animal Science.
Keith, let's begin our discussion with a two-part question. One, what causes low-quality hay? And then secondly, how can a producer determine its feeding value?
The causes of low-quality hay, first of all, is the fact that it would be cut too late as compared to a timetable of making it a higher quality because of plant maturation. Second, another cause of low-quality hay would be when rain damage occurs on a crop that's already been laid in the swath or in the windrow. And thirdly, when one makes hay a bit too wet, we find that hay is in the cure process or in storage, that we actually can have some deterioration of forage quality. Your second question, how do we determine the feeding value? I view this in really two approaches. I think we need to couple a sensory analysis along with a chemical analysis. We loosely call this sensory analysis visual appraisal, but actually it takes in more senses than that. And the term that is actually used is called organoleptic. And with that, we're essentially looking at the aspect of sight, we're looking at the use of smell, and we're also using our fingers in terms of a form of touch. And when I assess by sight, when I'm looking at the potential quality of a forage, is first of all the plant species that are within that packaged bale. I'm looking at what forages are there, and I'm also assessing what weeds might be a component of that particular bale. I have come to understand that some weeds are actually of more concern than others, possibly from a poisonous factor standpoint or a refusal basis. So one, I think, has to not only assess if there's weeds, but what weeds are there. I also then would assess the stage of maturity, if there are seed heads present, or if we're looking at a crop that's predominantly still vegetative. I'm looking for the presence of dust and also the presence of mold. And lastly, I'm looking for foreign objects that might be within that bale. Things such as aluminum from a can, or I might be looking for, dead matter. As an example, probably to the extreme might be the example of a dead snake. I assess by smell the mustiness of the hay, and would exercise caution for those of you that have respiratory concerns to do this approach, but certainly one can smell an off type of smell, a musty kind of smell when hay's been made a bit too moist. And lastly, I'm assessing the touch, how coarse it is. The other thing that I have noted is when my eyes don't pick a trace amount of a weed that might have spines on it, my fingers are going to find that, and I'm quickly going to withdraw and know that there's probably going to be some refusal of that hay because of the presence of those spines. So I'm also doing a chemical analysis, and this is going to require proper sampling techniques, which means that I really need to invest in a hay probe. And we don't have enough time today to go into the whole sampling scenario, but it's very, very important to do this properly. And I would refer you to a website, www.foragetesting.org, as a wonderful resource that goes into how to do the proper technique, where hay probes are available, and then also the certified laboratories in the country where forage samples can be sent. Part of the importance of the chemical analysis is that we want to sample each cutting from each field, and we call this a lot. We want to put into storage our hay in an organized way so that when we go to sample that hay, we do know where that hay actually did come from, and so we can do a better inventory so that we can feed the hay properly by the chemical analysis that we receive. And then lastly, we want to minimally sample for dry matter content, crude protein content, fiber, and mineral composition.
So John, let's assume we've got mature hay or hay that was rained on. How does a producer decide how to develop a supplementation strategy that will meet the cow requirements?
Well, thanks, Ron. Hello, everybody. You know, I think the first place we need to start, Ron, is what are we trying to feed out there? And you've said cows, but let's take an example of, say, we've got a 200 cow outfit in there. And in that herd, we've got mature cows, we've got bred heifers, we've got replacement heifers, and we probably have some bulls there as well. And so our strategy needs to be, where am I at today? And where do I need to be in, say, March of next year? And if it's a cow, the thing we're going to set up first is, what are my body condition scores today, my average condition scores today, and where do I need to be in March? And if I go back to some of that old data by Lemonager and Houghton, they talked about body condition scoring and how we set a program up. So, for instance, to change a cow from a body condition score of 4, which she might be now, to a body condition score of, say, 5 or even a 6, I need to add at least another 80 to 90 pounds of weight on that animal. So let's just say I want to put 100 pounds of gain on those cows. I've got 100 days to do it, so I need to have that cow gain 1 pound a day, Ron. But if it's a replacement heifer or if it's a bred heifer, I might need to be putting 2 pounds of gain on that animal to get them into a body condition score of, say, 5 or 6. The other thing that we really need to pay attention to in the new research that's come out is this concept of fetal program. We always thought if I could just get to the fall months, then I didn't have to worry about that cow. And we're realizing now that we need to pay attention to the protein requirements of these animals during this second and third trimester, because the data suggests that if I don't pay attention to it, then I have less productivity of that offspring, of that replacement heifer, that heifer calf, or less growth of the steer in the feedlot. And so we've got to take care of these animals in the second and third trimester. So I set a strategy up, where am I wanting to go, and then calculate where I think my gains have got to be, knowing that to change that cow from a condition score of 4 to 5 is somewhere between 80 and 100 pounds, Ron. Now, what do we got available? Well, in extension, we've said for years and years, this is a time that we can use up our lower quality forages. So the strategy should be, let's use the lower quality forages now and maybe supplement them, and then go to the higher quality forages at time of calving and into early lactation, with the exception of, let's be careful not to put too much protein into those cows at time of calving. So here's some kind of rules of thumb, Ron, on where we need to be. I like to see these cows, most of the cows and cows in, say, the Midwest are probably going to weigh about 1,400 pounds. I know that the dry matter requirements have got to be at least 2% of her body weight. That's 28 pounds of dry matter. And on an as-fed basis, you know, let's be thinking about 35 pounds of hay when we're on an all hay feeding program, okay? And so 35 pounds of hay, and then supplement them accordingly. And we'll talk a little bit about some supplements in just a second.
John, so we've got our hay in storage. We've tested it, analyzed it. Now, how does a producer decide what particular type of supplement needs to be fed?
Well, the issue is, can I get them to eat 35 pounds of corn stalks? And I doubt if they can. So we want to come in and make sure those cattle have got at least 8% protein in their diet, and probably somewhere in the 55 to 60% TDN. And so the first thing we could do, Bert, would be to come in and provide a protein supplement or supplemental protein. That can be done a lot of different ways. One, you could do it with just alfalfa hay. 5 pounds alfalfa hay might be all you need to do. Or you could provide some soybean hulls or some wheat midds, or you could buy a commercial supplement. And there's a host of supplements like tubs and liquid supplements. You can buy products that you can mix with your salt out there that'll provide supplemental protein. And the reason we provide protein is it causes those animals to eat more of that low-quality forage. And so if they're eating, say, 25 pounds of low-quality forage, by providing a protein supplement, you might be able to get them up to 28 to 30 pounds. You still may not have enough energy in the diet, and so we might want to supplement them with some alfalfa hay, or some, in your countries of the Midwest, some soybean hulls or some wheat mix works really well because they're high fiber, high energy supplements, and they really complement these low quality forages very well. I think one of the other things that's on people's mind, and I hear it all the time, is, you know, depending on where I'm at, let me calculate the cost per pound of supplemental protein, the cost per pound of supplemental energy out there. And that's right. That's what you need to do on that. But I want you to also be aware that when you're supplementing based on cost per pound of protein, also calculate non-feed costs. What does it cost me to carry that supplement out there to the cows in terms of fuel and labor? The other thing to consider, Bert, is should I maybe just feed these cows daily, or what about maybe 3 times a week? And there's some data out there that's saying providing supplemental protein once a week gave me the same kind of response as feeding it 3 times a week, or even weekly. And so providing protein out there once a week may be a way to really cut down on non-feed fuel and labor with your cattle. That's why we put things out there like tubs or liquid supplements or salt protein mixes out there, so we don't have to have those non-feed costs. But I got to tell you, you know, the place I'd start is what's available to me locally. Do I have supplemental hays? Do I have some of the byproducts like soy hulls or wheat midds or distillers grains? And if I do, then I'd look at those as one of the first places I'd go. Once again, what does it cost me to supplement out there, both in terms of feed costs and non-feed costs? And I think let's get a true picture on both of those costs out there.
Okay. So Keith, what's actually happening to hay quality when it's either baled too wet or harvested too mature, and what are the consequences?
Well, what happens when hay is cut too late, or we have rain damage that happens on this hay that causes it to become low quality, is we'll have a potential reduction of crude protein content, particularly when the hay is cut too late. We have an increased fiber content, which means there's lesser amount of cell solubles, and a majority of that cell soluble is going to be the sugars that are really easily digestible. And so I mentioned previously the need to talk about or sample and ask for nutrient-detergent fiber. This is roughly equivalent to the cell wall content, and it predicts the consumption, or we talk about intake, as was mentioned, of the forage. So that's what nutrient-detergent fiber will help us give an idea of how much of this particular hay that they will consume. And the other component, the acid detergent fiber, is essentially that cell wall, and it's acidified, and we lose the hemicellulose component of that cell wall. that is a predictor of digestibility of the forage. So what we end up then with lesser quality hay is a less digestible type of forage. And then rain damage in the field can actually leach many of the soluble minerals into the soil out of the cut forage. So that's a consequence. Now, when hay is baled too wet, what we get is microorganism buildup that causes heating within that hay. And with that heating, we can bind the protein to the fiber composition, and this can make less of the protein available. Mold formation can also occur then with this heating and the microorganism activity. And some of these molds can produce mycotoxin issues for the beef cattle. And there's possibility of respiratory concerns for the producers. They're handling this hay, and maybe for the cattle as well. So with baled hay too wet, we also can have a lesser energy value. And we all have heard about the issue of spontaneous combustion. And in the extreme case, this hay can heat to the point that we actually can lead to damage not only of the feed stuff itself, but also to the structure in which the hay is housed. And then lastly, one of the things that can happen is we're going to find that there's going to be more sorting of this hay, and there's going to be less refusal to the point that some of this hay is probably going to be used for bedding and not as a feed at all.
Let's assume we have low quality hay because of forage maturity or rain damage or mold. John, what should a producer watch for when feeding cows? And are there any management adjustments that you would recommend?
Oh, absolutely, Ron. You know, as we're going out there to look at the cows, I think we need to train our eyes. And one of the things that I've seen producers get in trouble with is when they just group them all together. And so, because you just kind of look at the average body condition of all the cows, I would suggest that because we've probably got the cows, replacement heifers, bred heifers, and then these younger weaned heifers, that we consider splitting them into 2 or 3 groups and work on that body condition and pay attention to changes in body condition. One time I was on a large ranch here in Montana and didn't realize those bred heifers were in such poor shape in condition score 4 and really had a wreck on our hands at time of calving. They were in condition score 4 at calving. We really worked hard with calving, getting them to have a live calf, but then, Ron, trying to get their body condition back so they rebreed within 100 days. So here's some things that I would look at. If I'm putting hay out there, do I know they're eating enough hay? On the average, are they eating enough hay? Cows, 35 pounds of as-fed material a day. With those heifers, somewhere around 20 to 25 pounds on those bred heifers, and then maybe 15 pounds on those heifer calves. So that's a big one. Do I have adequate dry matter intake? And I'll tell you what, body condition is going to tell you very quickly if you don't have enough hay going into them. Of all the lawsuits I've been on, it always comes down to intake. The cattle just didn't get fed enough and performance really sagged on it. Somebody asked me, he said, well, what about the manure? What about consistency of manure? And I hate to admit it, but yeah, beef cattle nutritionists, that's one of the first things I look at is the consistency of the manure. And if cows are defecating baseballs out there, Ron, I know I got a problem. I don't have enough protein in the diet because it's a dry, it's a hard manure pack, and I'm saying I think I need to get some protein into them, some alfalfa hay, some commercial supplement, distiller's grain, something like that, to kind of loosen that manure up. That's one way it tells me that I'm getting adequate protein. It's when that manure is just a little bit looser. Okay? As I said, I would really consider grouping the cows into several groups, take care of the heifers differently than I would the older cows. Nick Keith had a really good point. You know, we've had some rain in certain areas of the country, and this mold has come on. Vomitoxin doesn't really, but it sure causes them to shy away from that feed. They don't want to eat it, and so dry matter intakes go down. How do we handle it? You're going to have to dilute it. And so bringing some good quality hay with the poor quality hay is, to me, is a great way to go after that. If I'm feeding, and it's not so much a problem this year, but if I'm feeding annual hays or something like that, man, you got to watch for the nitrates on that, and that's always a place that I want to dilute the hay is when I've got a potential of some nitrate in that forage. With all the rain you've had in the Midwest, probably not a problem this year. Out in the western states where it's been really dry, yeah, nitrate's a problem. You're going to have to dilute it. You may have to dilute it 1/3 high nitrate hay, 2/3 low nitrate hay, something like that. If it's really bad, guys, burn it. Don't take the chance with these pregnant cows, or put it with some steers, something like that, that you don't cause an abortion on that. In a lot of these states, Ron, one of the things that we dilute with, we've got some really nice hay, and we'll dilute it with wheat straw. And so don't be afraid to put some wheat straw in. I know the purpose of this meeting is to talk about low quality hays, but you still may have some hay that you want to spread out, especially at time of lactation. Don't be afraid to put some straws out there as well. These low quality forages, biggest problem is low intake, low digestibility, low protein. You've got a real challenge because you've got to put some supplemental feed in there to cause them to eat more of that low quality feed, a protein supplement. Protein supplement causes them to increase digestibility. If it's not enough, you're probably going to have to reach out for an energy supplement as well, Ron.
You bet.
Keith, from an agronomic perspective, what's your take-home message for producers on low-quality hay?
Well, my quick response to that, Bert, is try to avoid making it. Making high-quality hay, however, is a lot easier said than done. And so it really comes down from an agronomic perspective. I would look at the forage species, first of all, in terms of what we intend the hay to possibly be. Some hays just inherently are higher quality than others. Don't procrastinate in getting the hay harvested. If we've got a window of opportunity of good weather and it's really time to get that hay made, let's get it done. Use technologies that are available to us, such as a properly set mower conditioner that lays a hay in a wide swath. Ted and windrow, invert only if it's necessary. Many people in the Midwest have looked at the consideration of wrapping baled silage into silage, the baleage that we talk about. And then also in the Midwest area, many of our balers are outfitted with a preservative applicator that can be used when hay is made at a little bit higher moisture. That preservative will help reduce that particular heating. And then lastly, always couple the sensory analysis with a chemical analysis to determine the quality of that hay.
John, from an animal science and nutrition perspective, what's your take-home message to producers that have low-quality forages?
Ron, I think there's about 4 things I want to leave you with. Number one, you got to pay attention to body condition scores. I think your data from other universities has clearly shown that when we maintain a good body condition at time of calving, the rest of the year really works nicely for us in terms of calving, getting those cows rebred, and taking care of that newborn calf. So pay attention to body condition score. If you don't know it, Ron can help you with that. Get them at a condition score of 5 or 6. Second thing is make sure that those cattle are eating enough dry matter a day. You might think you've got them enough out there, but I'm saying you got to have them out there around 35 pounds of feed a day, at least 35 pounds of feed. What are the available since if you're not getting them to eat? We would suggest maybe starting with a protein supplement. Could be alfalfa hay, could be distiller's grains, corn gluten feed, something like that, soybean hulls to help you on there if you don't need a lot of protein. A commercial protein supplement like a tub or a lick or a meal would work well for you. I agree with Keith. Probably the place to start is to get a really good forage analysis and then sit down with your county agent, your feed dealer, and get a balanced nutritional program put together. I want to tell you once again, with the rain you've had, I'd really check for moles, vomitoxins. And one thing I've not heard this morning is we've run into some problems with ergot in our forages, and ergot will really cause these animals to go off feed, and it has a problem with lameness in the animals. And so pay attention. Make sure you look at that feed that doesn't have those little ergot bodies. Looks like little mouse droppings on the tip of that, and bounty agent can help you determine how to best feed a feed that's contaminated with ergot. So molds and vomitoxins, I think with a lot of moisture that you've had this year, would be on my mind.
We have 2 archived videos that provide more detail on the topic of low-quality hay, and they're located at www.thebeefcenter.com. We also have a body condition score video component at that same location by searching and clicking on the right tab. Please join us again next month when our Beef Roundtable discussion will be on the care and management of the ranch horse. It should be a great discussion. Until next time, Bert and I hope you have a safe and rewarding month.